Currently, Zambia imports more and exports less, and according to the rule of commerce, if a country imports more and exports less, then that's indicative that the economy will not perform well. This notion has been tested time and again and seems to yield the same outlook.
In the past 2 years, since around 2013, Zambia has been having a trade deficit. This is in the past 2 years, Zambia has been importing more than it's been exporting. But prior to 2013, Zambia was exporting more because of a good copper price and other things on the international market.
Comparatively speaking, super countries such as China are renowned for being one of the largest exporters in the world. China's economy performs very well as it receives more money from foreign countries than it gives. A cross-section of people express their opinions on this phenomenon.
If you look at Zambia right now, we are lacking the industrial base. Countries like Japan right now, they do borrow a lot of money, but they're not worried. Why? Because one, they have a strong industrial base which supports production. And when you have bigger or larger scale production, you're able to sustain your economy in terms of employment opportunities for young ones, just even national output. Another thing that I would talk about is research and development. Yes, in Zambia, it is very important that we need to initiate this research and development. What do I mean? For research and development, it's help you to come up with new skills in terms of technology, new methods of production techniques that are cost effective. But for Zambia, that is not happening.
The Zambian government is mostly concentrated on the mining industry ever since independence, because that's where the stronghold is. Because we know we have a comparative advantage in the production of copper compared to any other mineral or any other product that we can produce. Looking at right now, the government is bringing in people from United Arab Emirates to come and look at the soil and find ways and means in which they can improve what fertilizer they can use to improve the agriculture sector. So I think they're doing something, though most of the concentration is on the mining industry.
I think it's the mindset which, as a nation, we've developed with. If you look at the education sector, from childhood, we are mostly taught on you go to school, go to college or university, then you get a job. So in this case, we are always depending on someone employing us, not rather looking at who we can employ. Then the second thing I'll look at, we talk about diversification. Diversification has been the song from the past. And as much as government obviously may have tried to put up things in place, but one thing we lack, I think, is implementation, resulting to a point where we always have to depend on certain things being brought in the country. Then one other thing I'll talk about is I think we don't have much of an aspect of trying to develop things so that we can export.
The problem at hand, according to the rules of commerce, is that Zambia imports more than it exports. The Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry says that this is not always a problem, but that there are situations that may necessitate the variation in balance of trade.
So when, of course, you are importing more than you're exporting, then you're a trade deficit, and the opposite is when you're exporting more, then you have a trade surplus. This does not always necessarily indicate that your economy maybe is not doing well if you have a trade deficit, because there are many reasons why you may have a trade deficit. And for example, one of the reasons where you may have a trade deficit is an example where you maybe are importing a lot of capital goods. And because you're importing a lot of capital goods, maybe for infrastructure, then that would mean that you would have a trade deficit. But you are doing a lot of construction, so your economy is growing and you're investing in your economy. So it doesn't always mean that.
Nevertheless, if the rise in imports and decrease in exports was to become a problem, the Economist had this to advise.
For a country to start exporting more, it needs to improve its productivity. This relates to different sectors, from agriculture to mining. So for mining example, mines will have to become more efficient so that they can produce more tons. And for agriculture, if the agriculture is rain-fed, maybe it could be irrigated, and in certain places better medicines can be used so that the yield per acre or hectare is larger. That's creating a greater productivity. Once you have that, even from a labor perspective, it changes the narrative so that the country can export more.
Mr. Shula further advised the government not to relax when the country starts exporting more.
For Zambia to have a better trade balance, Zambia will have to cut down on imports. And if you look at our imports, 60 to 70% is fuel and oil. And this has been made worse through ZESCO load shedding, because the country now has to import gas oils like petrol and diesel for generators. So if that can be reduced, if biofuels can be introduced, then that portion would reduce the imports, so that even if Zambia is not exporting a lot, we're still exporting more than we import.
The government has foreseen the burden of a poor trade performance in future and is thus putting in measures to prevent the situation. It is also calling on the public to come in and help the country reach its developmental climax.
We are encouraging local investments in our economy. We're also encouraging joint ventures for those who may not be able to go on their own. And then we're also encouraging the private sector especially to take advantage of the opportunities that are available and that have been made available through the policies and through the facilitation and through the business environment that has been made favorable. We're also encouraging the public to buy local products. And in doing so, they're actually ensuring that more of the jobs that have been created are actually staying in Zambia, and that we're also creating more jobs. Because as the demand grows, it means that those businesses will need to expand, and that means employing more people.
It's important that the public is continually updated and remains optimistic on seeing a better outlook of the country's economic development. For Kwacha Good Morning Zambia, I'm Joseph Kaputula.